My brother scoffed at the reunion. "This is my wife, the prosecutor." He called me paranoid. Then she heard. The prosecutor's face went from polite smile to stone-cold professional in the span of 3 seconds. I watched it happen from across my parents' living room, watched her hand freeze halfway to the appetizer plate, watched her eyes track toward the hallway where our father's voice carried from his study. She'd been reaching for a stuffed mushroom. Now her fingers curled into a fist. My brother Nathan noticed. "Babe, you okay?" Rachel Thornton, assistant district attorney for the Eastern District, 23 convictions in organized crime cases, didn't answer him. She was listening, really listening, to the conversation I'd been trying to get my family to hear for 8 months, to the phone call our father was having in his study with the door cracked open, voice low and careful, using phrases like "the usual arrangement" and "make sure the inspection gets delayed" and "nobody needs to know about the violations." My hands started shaking. I set down my beer before I dropped it. I'd been trying to warn my family about Dad for 8 months. 8 months of being called paranoid, dramatic, unstable. 8 months of Nathan rolling his eyes and telling me I needed therapy, that I was reading too much into things, that successful businessmen make deals all the time, and it doesn't mean they're criminals. 8 months of my mother crying and asking why I wanted to destroy the family. 8 months of being the crazy one, the problem child, the 32-year-old son who couldn't accept that his father was just good at business. But I wasn't crazy. I was a forensic accountant. I knew what financial crimes looked like when I saw them. I'd spent 6 years working for the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit before going private, specializing in construction fraud and corruption cases. I'd helped put away developers, contractors, and city officials who thought they were too smart to get caught. And when I'd started helping Dad with his company's books last spring, purely as a favor because his longtime accountant had retired, I'd found things that made my blood run cold. The family reunion had been my mother's idea. "We need to come together," she'd said on the phone 3 weeks ago. "This tension between you and your father is tearing us apart. Nathan's bringing Rachel. You should meet her. She's wonderful. Maybe having someone new around will help everyone relax." I'd almost said no. Almost. But something in me thought maybe, just maybe, if I could get Nathan alone, away from Dad's influence, I could make him understand. Nathan was a civil engineer, logical, detail-oriented. If I could show him the evidence I'd compiled, the patterns I'd documented, maybe he'd finally listen. I'd been so focused on convincing Nathan that I hadn't really thought about what it meant that he was bringing a prosecutor to a family gathering. That detail hit me about 30 seconds after Rachel walked through the door, shook my hand with a firm grip, and said, "Nathan's told me so much about you. He says you're brilliant with numbers." "Numbers don't lie," I'd said, and Nathan had laughed that dismissive laugh. "Here we go. David's about to tell you how Dad's secretly a mob boss or something. He's been on this kick for months." Rachel had smiled politely, the way you smile at family drama that isn't yours. "Nathan mentioned you had some concerns about your father's business." "Concerns is putting it mildly," I'd started, but Nathan cut me off. "He's paranoid. Dad runs a successful construction development company. He builds strip malls and office parks. David's convinced there's some massive conspiracy because he found some irregular invoices or whatever. Tell her, David. Tell my wife, who prosecutes actual criminals for a living, about your grand theory." The way he said it, wife and prosecutor, and like he was holding up credentials I couldn't challenge. Like bringing an ADA to Thanksgiving was the ultimate trump card against my accusations. I'd started gathering evidence in April. Dad's company, Thornhill Development Corporation, had been in business for 38 years. Solid reputation, multiple contracts with the city, shopping centers across 3 counties. On paper, everything looked legitimate, but I'd been trained to look beneath paper. The first thing I noticed was the subcontractors. Dad used the same 4 concrete companies for every project, rotating them in a pattern that seemed random until you mapped it against inspection schedules. Company A poured foundations on projects where Inspector Reeves was assigned. Company B worked sites under Inspector Kowalski. Company C and D split the rest. Each company charged 20 to 30% above market rate. Each company had the same registered agent. Each company's ownership led back to shell corporations registered in Delaware and Nevada. I'd spent a month tracing those shells. They all connected, eventually, to a man named Vincent Caruso, who had 2 prior convictions for bid rigging and a brother on the city's Building Standards Commission. When I brought this to Dad, he'd waved it off. "David, you don't understand construction. Those companies do quality work. They're licensed and bonded. The city approves them. The city approves them because someone's getting paid to approve them," I'd said. "Look at the inspection patterns. Look at how violations get waived. Look at the timing of these payments." He'd gotten angry then, really angry. Told me I was overstepping, that I'd been hired to organize his books, not investigate his business practices, that if I had problems with how he ran his company, I could leave. I'd left, but I'd also copied the files. All of them. 3 months of financial records, invoices, payment schedules, inspection reports, email correspondence. I'd spent May and June building a case file that would make any federal prosecutor salivate. Systematic bid rigging, bribery of public officials, falsification of inspection documents, money laundering through those shell companies. Safety violations covered up with payoffs, and the deeper I dug, the worse it got. In July, I found the injury reports, or rather, the lack of them. 3 separate construction sites had filed workers' compensation claims in the past 5 years. Standard stuff: falls, equipment accidents, the kind of injuries that happen in construction. But when I cross-referenced those claims against OSHA inspection records, 2 of the sites had never been inspected despite serious injuries requiring hospitalization. One worker had fallen 3 stories because of a missing guardrail. The OSHA report listed the site as compliant. The inspection had been conducted by a man named Thomas Reeves, who'd signed off on safety protocols that provably didn't exist because I had dated photographs from the construction company showing the work site the day of the accident. No guardrails, no safety netting, no fall protection of any kind. Thomas Reeves had lied in an official government document, and my father had paid him to do it. The payment was buried in a consulting fee to a company called Tri-State Safety Solutions, which didn't have a website, didn't have an office, and was registered to a P.O. box that happened to be 3 blocks from Inspector Reeves's home address. I took everything to Nathan in August, showed up at his apartment with printed files, spreadsheets, highlighted documents, laid it all out on his dining room table. "This is serious," I told him. "Dad's not just cutting corners. He's running a systematic criminal enterprise. He's bribing inspectors, falsifying records, endangering workers. People have been hurt. This worker, Carlos Mendez, he's 34 years old. He fell 3 stories because Dad paid someone to say the safety equipment was there when it wasn't. Carlos has permanent back injuries. He can't work construction anymore. And Dad made sure the investigation went away." Nathan had looked at the files for maybe 20 minutes. Then he'd pushed them back across the table. "You're reading too much into this. Construction is complicated. Consultants are normal. Dad's been doing this for almost 40 years. You think nobody would have noticed if he was actually breaking the law? People have noticed," I said. "They're getting paid not to care. You sound insane right now. You know that, right?" Nathan's voice had been sharp. "You sound like a conspiracy theorist. Dad's a good man. He employs 200 people. He's built half the shopping centers in this county. And you want to destroy him over some paperwork discrepancies? These aren't discrepancies. These are crimes. According to you, who got fired from the FBI for being too aggressive on cases. That stopped me cold. I didn't get fired. I resigned. After they told you to back off a case and you wouldn't. After you became obsessed and started seeing corruption everywhere. Your boss told Dad you had problems with authority and boundaries. Maybe you have problems with Dad too." I'd gathered my files and left. We didn't speak for 6 weeks. Then Mom called, crying, begging us to reconcile. Nathan called a week later, said he was getting married, said he wanted me at the wedding, said Rachel was important to him, and he wanted his family to get along. "Can you just drop this Dad thing?" he'd asked. "For me? For the family? Can you just let it go?" I'd said I'd think about it. What I'd actually done was keep investigating. September brought the real nightmare. I found the 2nd set of books. Dad kept them in a safe in his office. I knew the combination because I'd set up the safe years ago, back when I still trusted him, back when I thought he was just a successful businessman who needed help organizing his finances. The 2nd set showed the real numbers, the real payments, the real costs. Projects that reported supply costs of $800,000 had actual costs of $400,000. The difference went to those shell companies, which then kicked back 40% to a series of personal accounts held in my father's name and the names of 3 city inspectors. Over 5 years, Dad had moved $12 million through this system. He'd personally kept $4.8 million. The inspectors had split another $2 million. The rest had gone to the subcontractors who kept their mouths shut and did shoddy work that passed inspection because the inspectors were paid to pass it. I photographed every page. 53 pages of evidence that would send my father to prison for a minimum of 15 years. I'd taken it to a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but a former federal prosecutor named Catherine Hayes, who specialized in whistleblower cases. She'd reviewed my evidence for 3 hours. When she looked up, her expression was grave. "This is solid," she said. "This is really solid. Your father's going to prison. So are at least 3 city officials. You understand that if you move forward with this, your family will never forgive you?" "I understand." "You understand you'll be testifying against your own father?" "I understand." "And you're prepared for that?" I'd hesitated. Not because I didn't want to do it, but because I was trying to figure out if I was prepared to lose everything. My family, my brother, my relationship with my mother. Catherine had seen the hesitation. "Take some time. Think about it. This evidence isn't going anywhere. But once you file, there's no taking it back." I'd been thinking about it for 2 months. 2 months of sleepless nights. 2 months of imagining my father in prison. 2 months of Nathan's voice in my head calling me paranoid, insane, obsessed. And then Nathan called about the reunion, about bringing Rachel, about how she was an assistant district attorney, how she was brilliant, how I should meet her. "She's prosecuted mob guys, David. Real criminals. Maybe talking to her will help you understand that Dad's not some kind of crime lord." I'd agreed to come because I wanted Nathan to see this. Wanted him to see that I wasn't crazy. Wanted Rachel, with her prosecutorial experience, to look at what I'd found and tell Nathan I was right. I'd brought a laptop with scanned copies of everything. I'd planned to show them after dinner. I'd planned a whole presentation, but plans don't survive contact with reality. And reality, right now, was Rachel Thornton standing in my parents' living room, listening to our father incriminate himself on a phone call he clearly thought was private. I need the inspection report to say compliant, Dad was saying. His voice drifted from the study. I don't care what you found. That's what we pay you for. Make it compliant. Rachel's jaw tightened. She took 3 steps toward the hallway. Nathan grabbed her arm. Babe, where are you going? I need to use the restroom, she said, but her eyes were locked on that hallway. It's upstairs, Nathan said. I'll show you. I can find it. Her voice had changed. Gone was the warm woman making small talk about Nathan's engineering projects. This was the prosecutor. This was the woman who'd put mobsters in prison. She pulled free from Nathan's hand and walked toward the hallway. I followed. So did Nathan. Rachel, seriously, what's wrong? Shh. She held up one finger. Stopped just outside Dad's study. The door was open maybe 6 inches. Dad's voice continued. Look, Thomas, we've been doing this for 8 years. You take the money, you sign the form, everybody's happy. This is a simple electrical code violation. Just mark it corrected and move on. A different voice, tinny through speakerphone. The violation is serious, Richard. The panel's installed wrong. It's a fire hazard. So note that it needs to be corrected in 30 days, and we'll fix it before the final inspection. You said that about the Riverside project. Never got fixed. That building opened with the same violation. And has there been a fire? That's not the point. That's exactly the point. Nobody's been hurt. Nobody will be hurt. You're worrying over nothing. I'll make sure the panel gets redone. Just give me the 30-day window. A long pause. Then, this is the last time, Richard. I'm serious. Sure. Last time. I'll wire the payment tonight. Usual account? Yeah. But Richard, I mean it. I know you do, Thomas. I know you do. The call ended. We heard Dad's chair creak. Rachel stepped back from the door. Her face was completely neutral, which somehow made it more terrifying. Nathan was staring at her. That was just a normal contractor conversation, he said. Dad was working out inspection issues. That's normal. That was bribery of a public official, Rachel said quietly. That was conspiracy to falsify government documents. That was your father paying a building inspector to overlook code violations. You don't know that. You're making assumptions. I prosecute this exact crime. I know what it sounds like. Nathan turned to me. His face was red. Did you know about this? Is this what you've been trying to tell me? Yes. And you brought Rachel here? You set this up? I didn't set anything up. I didn't know Dad would be on the phone. I didn't know she'd overhear. But yes, I've been trying to tell you that Dad's been running a bribery and fraud scheme for years. You're both insane. Nathan's voice was rising. You're hearing what you want to hear. Dad's a businessman. He makes deals. That's not a crime. Paying inspectors to ignore code violations is absolutely a crime, Rachel said. Her prosecutor voice was fully engaged now, especially if those violations pose safety risks. This is bullshit. Nathan looked at me. You poisoned her against Dad. You put ideas in her head. I haven't talked to her about Dad. I literally met her 30 minutes ago. Then why is she immediately assuming the worst? Because I know what bribery sounds like, Rachel said. Because I've prosecuted 50 cases just like this. Because your father just admitted, on a phone call that I witnessed, to paying a building inspector to falsify a report on electrical code violations that create fire hazards. You're twisting his words. I'm not. Mom appeared in the hallway. She'd been in the kitchen. What's all the shouting about? Rachel thinks she heard Dad doing something illegal, Nathan said. David's been filling her head with conspiracy theories. I heard Richard admit to bribing a building inspector, Rachel said. Mom's face went pale. You must have misunderstood. I didn't. Richard would never. Mrs. Thornhill, I prosecute corruption cases. I know what bribery sounds like. Dad emerged from his study. He was smiling, relaxed, completely unaware of what had just happened. What's all the commotion? David brought his brother's prosecutor wife here to spy on you, Mom said. Her voice was shaking. Rachel overheard your phone call, I said. The one with Thomas Reeves. Dad's smile vanished. Just evaporated. His eyes went to Rachel. I don't know what you think you heard. I heard you offer to wire payment to a building inspector in exchange for marking a code violation as compliant, Rachel said. I heard you reference doing this for 8 years. I heard you acknowledge that a previous violation never got fixed despite promises. I heard you ask for his usual account. The silence that followed was absolute. Dad looked at me. The expression on his face was something I'd never seen before. Pure rage mixed with fear. You did this. You brought her here. I brought my brother's fiancée to a family reunion. You're the one who decided to bribe an inspector while she was in the house. Get out, Dad said. All of you. Get out of my house. I'm leaving, Rachel said. But I'm calling my office first thing Monday morning. You can't do that. You don't have jurisdiction. This isn't even your district. The Eastern District has a joint task force with the county DA on public corruption. We absolutely have jurisdiction. She turned to Nathan. We need to leave. Now. Nathan stood there, frozen between his father and his fiancée. Rachel, can we talk about this? No. I just witnessed a felony. I'm a sworn officer of the court. I have obligations. To what? To destroy my family over a phone call? To uphold the law. She looked at him. Really looked at him. I'm leaving. You can come with me or stay here. Your choice. She walked out. Nathan looked at me. This is your fault. All of this. You couldn't just leave it alone. He followed Rachel. The front door slammed. I stood in the hallway with my parents. Dad was breathing hard. Mom was crying. I hope you're happy, Dad said. You've destroyed this family. You destroyed it, I said. You've been committing crimes for 8 years. You've been bribing inspectors. You've been putting people in danger. I found the records. I found the shell companies. I found the second set of books. I found everything. Dad's face went from red to white. You went through my safe. I did. You had no right. I had every right. I'm a forensic accountant. You hired me to look at your books. I looked at all of them. You're going to regret this. Am I? Or are you? I pulled out my phone. I've been working with a lawyer, Catherine Hayes. She specializes in whistleblower cases. I've already scanned and documented everything in your safe. The evidence is in 3 separate locations. If anything happens to me, if anything happens to those files, they go straight to the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. I have contacts there, people who'll be very interested in what I found. Dad lunged at me. Actual lunged. Grabbed my shirt. Mom screamed. Where are the files? Where did you put them? Somewhere you'll never find them. I'm your father. You're a criminal. He shoved me. Hard. I stumbled back into the wall. Get out. Get out of my house and never come back. You're not my son anymore. You're nothing to me. I left. Walked out to my car. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. I sat there for 10 minutes, just breathing, trying to process what had happened. My phone buzzed. Nathan. I answered. Yeah. You happy now? His voice was tight. Controlled. You got what you wanted. Rachel's on the phone with her office. She's reporting what she heard. They're opening an investigation. Dad's going to be arrested. The family business is going to be destroyed. Mom's going to lose everything. And for what? So you could be right? So people don't die in buildings that aren't up to code. Nobody's died. Not yet. But Carlos Mendez has permanent injuries because Dad cut corners. Other people could get hurt. This isn't about being right. This is about stopping him before someone gets killed. You're self-righteous, and you're destroying people's lives. He's destroying his own life. I'm just making sure the truth comes out. Rachel's leaving me. That stopped me. What? She said she can't marry someone whose father is under investigation for corruption. She said it's a conflict of interest. She said she needs time to think. She said I need to decide whose side I'm on. His voice cracked. I'm losing her because of you. Because you couldn't let this go. Nathan, don't. Just don't. I don't want to hear it. You win. You were right. Dad's a criminal. Are you happy? Does it feel good? He hung up. I sat in my car and felt absolutely nothing. Not satisfaction, not relief, not even sadness. Just empty. I'd been right. I'd proven I was right. And I'd lost my entire family in the process. Monday morning, Rachel called me. I need to meet with you, she said, and I need you to bring everything you have on your father's business. I met her at a coffee shop in the city. She was there with 2 other people, a man in his 50s wearing a prosecutor's badge and a woman in her 30s with FBI credentials. David Thornhill, Rachel said. This is Senior Assistant District Attorney Leonard Grayson and Special Agent in Charge Jennifer Oakes from the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. They'd like to talk to you about your father. We talked for 4 hours. I showed them everything. The files from the safe, the shell company documentation, the inspection records, the payment trails, the injury reports. Catherine Hayes joined us halfway through with the formal whistleblower paperwork already prepared. Agent Oakes reviewed the evidence with the kind of focused intensity I remembered from my FBI days. This is comprehensive, she said. This is better than most of the cases our forensic accountants build. You did this in 5 months? I had access to the primary source documents. And you're willing to testify? Yes. Against your father? Yes. She exchanged looks with Grayson. He leaned forward. You understand this is going to be ugly. Your father will hire expensive lawyers. They'll attack your credibility. They'll claim you're bitter about being fired from the FBI, that you had a grudge against your father, that you manipulated evidence to make him look guilty. I was never fired. I resigned after a disagreement about case priorities. They'll make it sound like you were fired. They'll make you sound unstable. I am stable. My evidence is solid. Let them try. Catherine Hayes smiled slightly. David's been preparing for this for months. He knows what he's getting into. Rachel had been quiet. Now she spoke. What about Nathan? I looked at her. What about him? He's not involved in this. Is he? He doesn't work for Thornhill Development. He didn't know about the fraud. No, he's a civil engineer at a different company. He has nothing to do with this. Good, because he's having a hard time with this. With all of it. He told me you're leaving him. Her expression flickered. I told him I needed space. I didn't say I was leaving him. But I can't marry into a family that's under criminal investigation. Not while I'm a prosecutor. It's a massive conflict. I understand. Do you? Because Nathan thinks you did this to hurt him. He thinks you brought me to that reunion specifically so I'd overhear your father. I didn't know Dad would be on the phone. I didn't orchestrate that. I was planning to show you the evidence after dinner and ask for your professional opinion. That's all. She studied me. But you wanted me to know. You wanted someone in authority to see what you'd found. Yes. Why not just go to the authorities yourself? I did. I'm here. But I wanted Nathan to see that I wasn't crazy first. I wanted him to understand that this was real before the arrests started. And now he hates you. Yeah, now he hates me. Grayson cleared his throat. We need to move forward with this. We're going to need David to wear a wire. That got my attention. What? Your father doesn't know we're investigating yet. We'd like to keep it that way for a few more weeks while we build the case. If you could initiate contact, try to get him to talk about the payments, the inspectors, anything incriminating. He won't talk to me. He told me I'm not his son anymore. Try anyway. Tell him you've reconsidered. Tell him you want to reconcile. See if he'll meet with you. I thought about it. Okay. Agent Oakes pulled out a consent form. This is for the recording. Once you sign, anything your father says can be used in court. I signed. The wire was a small digital recorder clipped to my belt under my shirt. It looked like a phone but captured audio in perfect clarity. They gave me a script. Apologize. Act remorseful. Say you overreacted. Get him talking about the business. Ask about specific inspectors. Record everything. I called Dad that afternoon. He answered on the 5th ring. What do you want? I want to apologize. Little late for that. I know, but I'm trying anyway. I overreacted. I let my training get in the way of my judgment. I saw patterns where maybe there weren't any. I'm sorry. Silence. Then, you cost me my son's marriage. I know. I'm sorry for that too. Can we talk? In person? Why? Because you're my father. Because I don't want to lose you over this. More silence. Thursday. My office. 2 p.m. I'll be there. Thursday. I walked into Thornhill Development Corporation wearing a wire and carrying 8 months of guilt about what I was about to do. Dad was in his office. Same office where I'd found the safe. Same desk where he'd built his company. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. Sit, he said. I sat. We stared at each other. Your brother's destroyed, Dad said. Rachel left him. She's saying the engagement is off until the investigation concludes. He's devastated. I'm sorry. Are you? Because you started this. I started it by finding evidence of crimes. You committed the crimes. His jaw tightened. You don't understand business. You've never run a company. You've never had to make payroll for 200 people. You've never had to compete in a market where everyone's cutting corners. You think I wanted to pay off inspectors? I had to. It's how the game works. The game is illegal. The game is survival. You know how many developers went under during the recession? Half of them. Half. I survived because I was smart. Because I built relationships. Because I knew which inspectors would work with me and which ones wouldn't. You mean which ones you could bribe. I mean which ones understood that construction is complicated and sometimes you need flexibility on timeline. That's all this is. Flexibility. You paid Thomas Reeves to overlook safety violations that put workers at risk. Thomas understood that we'd fix things eventually. You didn't fix the Riverside project. The Riverside project is fine. It's been open for 3 years. No fires, no injuries, no problems. Because you got lucky. Because I know what I'm doing. He leaned forward. You want to destroy me over this? Fine. But understand what you're destroying. Your mother's retirement is tied up in this company. Your brother's inheritance. 20 years of our family's work. You'll be making us all pay for mistakes that hurt nobody. Carlos Mendez would disagree. Carlos Mendez got a workers' comp settlement. He's fine. He has permanent back injuries. He can't work. He's getting paid not to work. Most people would call that a win. I felt sick. How can you say that? You caused his injury. I didn't push him off that scaffold. He fell. Accidents happen. The scaffold didn't have proper fall protection because you cut corners. According to you, according to my inspector, everything was compliant. Your inspector lied. Your inspector did his job. Look, David, I get that you have this idealized view of how business should work, but the real world is messy. Sometimes you have to make compromises. Sometimes you have to work the system. That's not corruption. That's survival. You paid $12 million through shell companies over 5 years. That's not working the system. That's money laundering and fraud. His expression changed, got colder. How do you know about the shell companies? I found your second set of books. You had no right to go in that safe. You hired me to look at your finances. I looked at all of them. I hired you to organize receipts, not to investigate me like I'm some kind of criminal. You are a criminal. You've been running a systematic bribery operation for 8 years. You've falsified inspection documents. You've endangered workers. You've committed fraud. Prove it. I have. I've documented everything. He went very still. What did you do? I made copies. I scanned every page in your safe. I built a complete case file with payment trails, shell company documentation, inspection records, everything. And what did you do with it? I took it to the authorities. The color drained from his face. Actually drained. He went from angry red to pale white in seconds. You didn't. I did. There's an active investigation. They're building a case. You're going to be indicted. You turned me in. Your own father. You gave me no choice. I gave you every choice. I told you to leave it alone. I told you to drop it. And let you keep breaking the law? Let you keep putting people at risk? You sanctimonious little shit. You think you're better than me? You think your hands are clean? You worked for the FBI. You know how the system works. You know that sometimes the rules have to bend. The rules don't bend. They break. And when they break, people get hurt. Dad stood up. Get out. Dad, get out of my office. Get out of my company. I don't ever want to see you again. They're coming for you. Probably within a month. You should get a lawyer. I have lawyers. Good ones. Expensive ones. And they're going to tear you apart on the stand. They're going to make you look like a bitter child with a grudge. They're going to destroy your credibility. They can try. They'll succeed. And when this is over, when I've beaten this, you'll have nothing. No family, no brother, no father, just your precious moral high ground. I hope it keeps you warm. I stood up. I'm sorry it came to this. No, you're not. You wanted this. You wanted to prove you were smarter than me. You wanted to be the hero. Congratulations. You win. I walked out, got in my car, drove 6 blocks, pulled over, called Agent Oakes. I got it. He admitted to everything. The indictment came down 3 weeks later. Richard Thornhill, charged with conspiracy to commit bribery, wire fraud, money laundering, and falsification of government documents. 3 city inspectors were arrested the same day. Thomas Reeves, Michael Donovan, and Angela Simmons. All 3 charged with accepting bribes and falsifying inspection reports. The local news covered it. The papers ran stories. Prominent developer accused of corruption ring. My phone exploded with messages. Mom left 17 voicemails. Nathan sent 1 text. I hope you're happy. I wasn't happy. I felt like I'd set fire to my own life. Catherine Hayes walked me through the whistleblower process. The federal government had programs to protect people who reported financial crimes. If Dad's assets were seized, I might be entitled to a percentage as a reward for the evidence I'd provided. Could be several $100,000, she said, assuming the case holds up. I don't want money. You earned it. You did the work. I ruined my family for it. You exposed crimes. That's different. Rachel called me a week after the indictment. How are you holding up? I'm fine. You're lying. Probably. Nathan's not doing well. I know. He wants to reconcile with me, but he also wants me to make this investigation go away. He doesn't understand that I can't do that, that I won't do that. I'm sorry you're caught in this. I'm not caught in anything. I made my choice. I heard a crime. I reported it. That's my job. But Nathan thinks I should have just forgotten what I heard, that I should have prioritized his family over the law. What did you tell him? I told him that's not who I am. If he wants to marry someone who looks the other way when she witnesses crimes, he's marrying the wrong person. Did he understand? I don't know. We're taking space from each other right now. Probably for the best. She paused. I wanted to tell you something. The case is solid. The evidence you provided is some of the most comprehensive documentation I've seen in a corruption case. The defense is going to fight hard, but they're fighting from a losing position. Your father's going to prison. How long? Federal sentencing guidelines for this kind of systematic corruption? He's looking at 10 to 15 years, maybe more depending on what else comes out during discovery. I felt something heavy settle in my chest. That's basically the rest of his life. He's 63. He committed crimes for 8 years. He endangered workers. He defrauded the government. Actions have consequences. I know. Do you? Because Nathan told me you're second-guessing yourself. Said you've been calling him trying to explain why you did this. I want him to understand. He won't. Not now. Maybe not ever. Some people can't separate loyalty from morality. Nathan's one of them. Were you? Was I what? One of them. Before you became a prosecutor. She thought about it. Probably. Then I spent 2 years watching victims testify about people who hurt them. Watching families torn apart by crimes that got ignored. Because someone didn't want to make waves. I learned that sometimes making waves is the only way to stop drowning. That's poetic. That's survival. We hung up. The trial was scheduled for 8 months later. In the meantime, the investigation expanded. Federal agents found more evidence, more inspectors on the take, more shell companies, more fraudulent documents. The case grew from 3 defendants to 7, from 1 jurisdiction to 3. The media coverage intensified. Corruption ring expands. More officials arrested in development scandal. I testified before a grand jury twice. Spent hours walking prosecutors through the financial evidence, the payment trails, the shell company structures, the falsified inspection reports. Every time I explained how the scheme worked, I felt like I was driving another nail into my father's coffin. Nathan stopped returning my calls entirely. Mom sent me 1 letter, handwritten, 3 pages. It said I'd destroyed our family, that I'd chosen strangers over blood, that she'd raised me better than this, that she'd never forgive me. I read it once, put it in a drawer, tried not to think about it. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I testified for 2 days. The defense attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Lyons who charged $800 an hour, tried exactly what Dad had predicted. She painted me as bitter about my FBI career, suggested I had a grudge against my father, implied I'd manipulated evidence to make him look guilty. Isn't it true you were asked to resign from the FBI? She asked. No, I resigned voluntarily after a disagreement about priorities. A disagreement where you wanted to pursue a case your supervisors told you to drop. I thought the case had merit. They disagreed. And you quit rather than follow orders. I left because I couldn't work in an environment where I was told to ignore evidence. Evidence you thought you'd found. Just like you think you found evidence against your father. The evidence against my father is documented and verified. By you, the person with a history of seeing crimes where others see normal business practices. By bank records, financial documents, and recorded admissions. She tried for hours. Couldn't shake my testimony. The evidence was too solid, the documentation too thorough, the recordings too clear. When Dad testified, he claimed everything was legitimate. The shell companies were just tax planning. The inspector payments were consulting fees. The safety violations were mistakes, not crimes. The jury didn't believe him. The deliberation took 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Dad stood there while the verdict was read. Didn't move, didn't react. Mom collapsed in the gallery. Nathan caught her. He didn't look at me. Not once. Sentencing came 2 months later. Judge Patricia Fairchild, 30 years on the bench, former prosecutor herself, looked at my father with something like pity. Mr. Thornhill, you ran a successful business for decades. You employed hundreds of people. You contributed to your community. But you also systematically corrupted public officials. You falsified government documents. You endangered workers for profit. The court must balance your positive contributions against the serious nature of your crimes. She sentenced him to 12 years in federal prison. 3 of the inspectors got between 4 and 6 years each. The city was forced to re-inspect every project Thornhill Development had built in the past 10 years. 15 buildings were found to have serious code violations. 2 were temporarily closed for emergency repairs. 1 shopping center had an electrical panel so poorly installed it was rated at imminent fire risk. That building had been open for 4 years, serving customers, employing people. 1 electrical surge away from catastrophe. Carlos Mendez filed a civil suit 3 months after the criminal trial. His lawyer argued that Dad had deliberately created unsafe conditions that led to his injury. The case settled for $2.8 million. Dad's assets were seized to pay. Mom lost the house, lost her retirement accounts, lost everything. She moved to a small apartment in Pennsylvania near her sister. She sent me the new address with no note, just the address on a card. Nathan sent 1 email 4 months after sentencing. Dad's in prison. Mom's broke. The family business is gone. 200 people lost their jobs when Thornhill Development filed for bankruptcy. I lost Rachel. She decided she couldn't marry someone who couldn't separate family loyalty from moral obligation. Said I needed to figure out who I was before we could move forward. I haven't figured it out yet. I don't know if I will. But I know this. You were right. About Dad. About the crimes. About everything. And I hate that you were right. I hate that you had the strength to do what I couldn't. I hate that you destroyed our family to save people I never met. But mostly I hate that I can't forgive you for it. Even though I know I should. Even though I know Dad made his choices and you just exposed them. I can't. Maybe someday. Not now. Nathan. I read that email 50 times. Tried to write responses. Deleted them all. There was nothing to say. The FBI's whistleblower program paid out 8 months after sentencing. My share of the recovered assets, $680,000. I donated half to a non-profit that helped injured construction workers. Kept the rest. Used some of it to pay Catherine Hayes. Put the rest in an account I tried not to think about. Rachel called me one last time. I thought you should know. The city's implementing new inspection protocols, random audits, mandatory documentation reviews, digital submission of all inspection reports with video evidence requirements. They're calling it the Thornhill Protocols. Because of Dad? Because of what your evidence revealed. The corruption was systematic. It had been going on for over a decade. You exposed it. You probably saved lives. I destroyed my family. Your father destroyed your family. You just made sure everyone knew about it. A year after the trial, I was working as a forensic accountant for a private firm. Good job. Good pay. I worked alone mostly. Examined financial documents for fraud cases. I was good at it. Still good at finding patterns nobody else saw. I got an email one afternoon. Unknown sender. Subject line. Thank you. The message was from a man named James Whitmore. You don't know me, it said. But I work at the Riverside Shopping Center. The one your father built. The one that got re-inspected after the trial. They found the electrical panel was installed wrong. Fire hazard. Critical risk. They shut us down for 3 days while they fixed it. My wife was 8 months pregnant. She worked in the coffee shop on the first floor. If that panel had sparked, if there'd been a fire, I don't want to think about it. The inspector said the building could have gone up in minutes. Old construction. Lot of wood framing. Poor fire suppression. My wife could have died. My unborn daughter could have died. Because your father cut corners and paid someone to say it was safe. You stopped that. You exposed him. You made them re-inspect. You saved lives. I know you lost your family over this. I read the articles. I just wanted you to know it mattered. What you did mattered. Thank you, James. I read that email 3 times. Then I closed my laptop, walked to my window, looked out at the city, thought about Nathan, who couldn't forgive me, Mom, who wouldn't speak to me, Dad, sitting in a federal prison in Kentucky, serving 12 years for crimes he still probably thought were just business. I thought about Rachel, who'd walked away from Nathan because he couldn't understand that some lines can't be uncrossed, some rules can't be bent, some truths can't be ignored. I thought about Carlos Mendez, who'd fallen 3 stories because my father decided safety equipment cost too much, about James Whitmore's pregnant wife, working in a building that could have burned down around her, about all the people who'd never know how close they came to disaster. I pulled out my phone, sent Nathan 1 text. I'm sorry for what it cost, but I'm not sorry for what I did. I hope someday you understand the difference. He never responded. I didn't expect him to. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.